All right, welcome everyone to our first workshop with our Student and Emerging Leaders Committee with the National Association of Black Social Workers. I would like to say thank you all for joining us. We have some distinguished panelists with us this evening. But before we get started, I'd like my co-chair to introduce himself for the SELC committee.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hotep family. My name is Eugenio Walker. I am the co-chair to Calvin. And I just wanted to go briefly over, what the student emerging leaders do and offer for the organization before getting started. So Student Emerging Leaders Committee, formerly known as the Office of Student Affairs, was established in 1985 to exemplify the importance and value of developing emerging professionals. SELC is committed to motivating and communicating with students and emerging professionals within NABSW. We define emerging professionals within the first 5 years of their career. Our aspiration is to encourage students in creating and maintaining successful student chapters and aim to support emerging professionals to be reflective of the NABSW mission. We are concerned with the advocacy, recruitment, and retention of emerging professionals of African ancestry, and SELC seeks to provide leadership and direction relevant to students and emerging professionals' needs, challenges, and professional development. Ashe, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ashe. So again, welcome to those that just joined. And at this time, what I'd like to do is just extend the opportunity for each panelist that's going to be speaking tonight to just introduce themselves. And you can go over your kind of brief history or bio and work history right before you answer your first question. So right now, it's just a name to introduce yourself, and you can say where you're representing from or your business. So we'll start with Dr. Odera.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Odera. I am in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm representing Virginia Commonwealth University.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Dr. Baldwin-White.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Adrian Baldwin-White, and I am also representing Virginia Commonwealth University.
Thank you. Mr. Mario Barnes.
Good evening, everyone. I am Mario Barnes. Provide therapy at Uplift, and I also work as a clinical counselor down at NAS Oceana.
Thank you. Mitzi Glass.
Evening, everyone. My name is Mitzi Keys Glass. I'm representing, I don't know, I'm representing Norfolk State University as a professor. I also represent Christopher Newport as a professor. I will be talking today about my career as a medical social worker that I'm not doing anymore, but that's what I will talk about today. And currently I'm in private practice and also do mental health assessments for Maryview Behavioral Health Unit. So
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Lawanda Jones.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lawanda Jones. I'm a private provider with the intellectually disabled population, Laugh and Live.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, we're going to get ready to jump right into it. And what we wanted to talk about again today was really exposing our students and our emerging leaders to different career paths in social work. We know social work is vast in regards to looking at all three levels, the micro, meso, and macro level. There's really different avenues that you can get into and something that should pique your curiosity and a passion within. But we know we can't represent every field on this call right now, but we'd like to highlight a few of them. And we have some distinguished panelists again tonight that are going to cover some of those key areas. We have 6 questions that each panelist will be asked. We'll start in no particular order, but I'll ask each panelist the first question. We'll go through everyone. Once everyone is finished and questions have been answered and asked, then we'll go to our second question, again, starting from a new order and a new set of questions. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Again, this is being recorded so that we can share it with the NABSW organization and other committee members. It is a national committee, so therefore we do have people in different time zones, and they'll be accessing this information at different times. So again, we thank you for joining us. We know some of you are going through homecoming season. Behold, the Norfolk State was yesterday, and we had a great, was not yesterday, the whole weekend, and we had a great time. So some of you have experienced that yourselves. So again, welcome. And we'll get into our first question. First question gets into field and experience. I'll start with, let's see, nobody wants to go first, right? But I know who can handle the pressure. We'll start with good brother, Mr. Damien Wilson. Welcome, sir. First question going into field and experience is, what area or field of social work are you currently in, and how long have you been working in this area?
Well, first and foremost, behold the green and gold. Happy homecoming season to all HBCUs. See my Howard Bison up there. Happy homecoming to you all as well. Um, Damien Wilson, I do work for Virginia Beach City Public Schools. The area of field I'm in is school social work. I was a school social worker for 13 years, transverse both Title Ones, comprehensive school settings, and alternative education. 2020, I was appointed as Director Coordinator of School Social Work Services, which I'm an administrator. I provide oversight over 45 school social workers and clerical, and I am responsible as the McKinney-Vento liaison for Virginia Beach City Public Schools, directing all homeless education. So my school social work or social work journey, as some may say, deeply evolves around education. And I guess the root of why I may have got to this is education and poverty, which is one of the traditional assets of social work or one of the foundations that we speak of social work. So that is pretty much my expertise. I like to think of myself as a meso social worker because it's just not clinical, it's just not macro. It's a combination of all those things. And just like a big pot of gumbo, you are mixing in all them spices to get what I believe is just a meso social worker. And that is the field I stand on, brothers and sisters. And that is what I claim to represent. Ashe.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Well said. And next, we'll extend the same question to Mr. Barnes. What area or field of social work are you currently in, and how long have you been doing the work in this area? And before he gets started, I know he was brought on in reference to speak about the private practice sector, but he also does serve a unique perspective, and that is in the role of assisting our military families with military social work. So you can shed light on both if you'd like, sir.
Yes. All right. So as far as my field of social work, I am more on the micro level. So providing therapy, I've been doing that since 2019 when I first got licensed. A therapist is something that I will always be at heart, no matter where I go, no matter what I do. That lives in me. My primary role that I serve in is a clinical counselor, working primarily like with the Navy and the military personnel. We have like Marines, Army personnel that come from time to time, but primarily Navy. So with that, we provide the individual counseling. We work on the group levels. I do enjoy doing a lot of work with the groups because we work with a lot of domestic violence as well in that program. So there's two roles that we actually serve in as a clinical counselor, not only providing the direct care work, but we also provide the case management work for those domestic violence cases. And so I get charged with leading the men's domestic violence group, and we get to do like a lot of community outreach as well that allows us to kind of provide education and prevention. And so with that particular track, again, all of it is hands-on work primarily. We're always going to serve individuals, families, children, things of that nature. But that is the overall field currently.
Thank you for sharing that, sir. Next, we'll go to Dr. Baldwin-White. What area or field of social work are you in currently, and how long have you been working in this area?
So I am in the academic part of social work. I have been a professor since 2018, after I graduated from Arizona State University. Um, there are basically three parts of what I do as a professor. My primary role is as a researcher. So I do research in gender-based violence prevention. The second leg of that is teaching. So I teach two classes a semester. This semester I'm teaching research methods. And then the third leg of what I do is service. So service to the School of Social Work. So I serve on different committees and help the School of Social Work make sure that it's thriving, and make sure all of the sort of back end things that the students don't see are getting done so that the school can sort of maintain its status and keep serving the students and the community.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Dr. Odera.
Awesome, thank you. So I am also representing academia, but I am an academic administrator. I have been at VCU for 15 years. I started well, this is my 15th academic year, started in 2011. I've spent a great deal of my time in administrative roles, and I'm currently the director of the BSW program for the School of Social Work. Prior to getting into higher ed, I was also a school social worker. So shout out to the school social workers in Richmond City Public Schools. And I also worked in child protective services as well. Yeah, I see you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Next, we'll go to Lawanda Jones.
Behold the green and gold. So
Oh,
I am currently the co-owner of Laugh and Live LLC. It's a residential supportive in-home company that works with individuals that have intellectual disabilities, formerly known as mental retardation. We have three programs under that: residential supportive in-home, sponsored residential, and independent living. For residential supportive in-home, for those that are not in the field of more familiar with it, I tell them it's closely related to CNA, but our staff are called direct support professionals because they do have a little bit more knowledge and they have a little more personalized skills. And then we also do sponsor residential. That's where the individual actually comes to live with you in your personal home and your home is licensed. And then we have an independent living program where we focus on those with the intellectual disabilities. They have their own place, and we work with them on developing social skills, more independent skills, activities of daily living. So I started off my career with the City of Newport News in their therapeutic recreation program, where I worked there for a few years. And then I worked at Eggleston for just a short period of time to get clinical writing skills. And from there, I went to the CSB, where I did most of my career as a support coordinator in the ID. I then transitioned as a supervisor, child and adolescent, while doing mentoring. And I went back and got my master's degree. And I finished off my career there as a mental health supervisor. And while I was there, I was dibbling in both personal as far as opening my own business as well as the CSB. So I decided to leave there, and my business partner and I, we've been in operations now for 5 years.
thank you, Ms. Jones. Great information. And next, we'll go to Mitzi Glass. Again, what area or field of social work are you currently in, and how long have you been working in this area?
Okay, so again, I'm excited to be here. Shout out to VCU. That's where I got my master's from many years ago. Currently, I do private practice at a agency called, or a private practice called Community Psychological Resources here in Norfolk. I don't own the practice, but I own my business in the practice. I'm also in academia. I'm a professor at Norfolk State University, as well as Christopher Newport University. And maybe about once a week, I go over to Maryview Behavioral Health Unit and do some psychosocial assessments for them. Today, though, however, I think I'm representing medical social work, which I did for 32 years. I was at Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters for 32 years and retired from there December 20th of last year. So.
Thank you for sharing. So again, as you can see, those that again might be attending or on this call that are new to the profession or are currently enrolled as a student, social work is so broad. I think we've heard just about every area mentioned. As you can see, social workers juggle many hats. Oftentimes, it's not just in one area. But that's the thing about social work that's so great. You're not locked into just one particular area. You can be in more than one thing, anything from private practice to working in the hospital setting to a school setting, then school social workers. All of these things can kind of intertwine, but yet you yourself can also do them and be great at what you do, and that's because of the training that we've received through our accredited social work programs. So kudos to everyone for the hard work that you're doing to serve our community. We know that everyone can't be a social worker because it takes a special person to do this. A lot of times we've heard that social work is the heart work, and we go beyond the heart work and really look at through our unique lens and our perspective as social workers and make sure that the students have a voice and families have a voice. So going into our second part of this, we've heard what some of you do, and now let's get into providing information to students and emerging leaders. What level of education or certifications are required for your particular track? So again, I'll repeat that. What level of education, certification, or licenses are typically required for your particular track? And this time we'll start with Dr. Odera.
Sure. So I am fortunate in that I have both a BSW and an MSW, which I take pride in. Sometimes people just mention that MSW and they breeze on by that BSW, but I'm very proud to have that degree as well. I also have a doctorate in educational leadership. So I knew that I wanted to go into academic administration, and so I specifically chose a doctorate degree that would prepare me for administrative work and leadership specifically. It was also important to me to get a practitioner doctorate degree because that I describe myself as a pracademic, if you will, because I still readily identify as a practitioner, that social work is central to my identity and how I operate as a professional. And so I wanted a doctorate degree that was also practitioner focused so that I could go in and work with organizations from a change point of view. So those are my educational background and degrees.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Next, we'll go to Mario Barnes.
For my track as far as the clinical counseling and therapy, of course, LCSW, your licensed clinical social worker, you have to get that to be able to do this work at any level. But on the way up, I got my bachelor's in psychology at Christopher Newport University, and then I went on to get my master's in social work at Norfolk State University. And so from there, I went through the supervision process, which took me roughly 3 years to finish before I went and took my tests. And so, like I said, once you get to that place, you can really write your ticket and kind of decide what options you want to go. But it's primarily getting that license that's going to determine if you have access to this track.
Gotcha. And just a
Oh,
little caveat. Go right ahead. I'll let you
yeah, let
finish.
me let me add one more piece as well, because I know along the way, if you are not licensed or fully licensed, a lot of times people are able to provide that as they are under supervision, but you can only do that if you're under supervision. So if you are between your MSW and licensure, you're able to kind of get some hours in that way as well.
Great addition to that. And also one thing I wanted you to piggyback on, and it wasn't listed, but I think you can handle this. If you get your LCSW in Virginia, does that naturally just work everywhere in every state?
It naturally does not. You would have to be licensed well, you can only practice in the state in which you are licensed. So, for instance, I had a client who moved to North Carolina. And now, once you move to North Carolina, I was not able to practice unless I go through the process of getting licensed through that state.
Thank you for sharing. And just to let those know who don't, you can be licensed in more than one state. As he just mentioned, you have to just follow the procedure for licensure in that state, meet the requirements, take the test, and you can become licensed in that state. It is good to know that Virginia does have one of the most stringent requirements for licensure. But again, you can be licensed in more than one state. So if that's something you desire to do, even within our organization, we have some people that are in that scenario and can provide you information or guidance. Next, we'll go to Dr. Baldwin-White.
Thank you. So I have a bachelor's degree in English, and I got my MSW from the University of Alabama. I also have a PhD in social work. So mine is not a practice degree, mine is a research degree. And so basically, I spent 6 years preparing to be a researcher in social work and take more of a focus on how to implement change system-wide rather than individual-wide.
Thank you for sharing. So again, key 2 points with that is we've heard that there is the practice track for your doctorate, which is the DSW, and you have your research side, PhD in social work, as you mentioned, that does focus more on the research side of things. But both you are still recognized as a doctor and have full credits therein. So two different tracks, and again, we can help you out with more information with that. Lawanda Jones. It's Sydney,
Calvin,
I'm sorry.
Calvin. So I have a bachelor's of art in psychology that I graduated with in 2006, and then I did work in the field for a numerous amount of years. And I went back in 2017 to work on my master's in social work, where I finished from Norfolk State again in 2020. For my field, for the ID, entry level positions, you must at least have your bachelor's degree in that. However, when you're in there with the ID population, if you've been doing that and working and doing paperwork, the clinical piece, you take some classes through Virginia Commonwealth University, and then they give you a certification. It was some modules, I should say. Let me change that. It's modules. There's a certain amount of modules that you have to go through once you finish those modules after you've done your year of clinical work with the ID population. You can then sign QDDP behind your name.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing. And that might be kind of the equivalent to what you might see on some paperwork, QMHP, C,
Correct.
Qualified Mental Health Professional, C for children, or A for adults, or AC, and in your case, the credentials for that population as well. So just with the degree doesn't necessarily mean you can work in some of these areas. You need to find out what credentials you need to be applicable for employment. Next, we'll go to Damien Wilson.
Well, I like to think that mine is the most simplest. So once again, in my social work journey, got my BSW from the FNR Strong School of Social Work at Norfolk State University. And yes, I do claim VCU as well, Virginia Commonwealth University, where I got my master's in social work. So just want to put that out there for people who do not think I do claim it. So I am a Spartan and a Ram. With that being said, it's a school pupil personnel license to be in school social work. It may differ, vary by state. Some states you still have to actually take a test to be a school social work. So even if you do have an MSW, you are required to take an exam. It may be something called a licensed school social work. So it does depend on what state you're in. I like to stereotypically say when you go up north, it is more exam driven to get into educational systems, whereas in the South or Midwest, that may not be the case. But what is generally needed is a people personnel license, which means when you are going through your master's program, because in school social work practice, the master's is a terminal degree and is what you need. When you are going through those master's program, you have to take some additional classes, which you can take within your scope of placement when you are working on your MSW. It may require an additional class. So that is typically a couple of education classes. What is recommended from my point of view is always school law, things related to special education and leadership and administration. And then, of course, you take the school social work class, which provides you insight into the field of school social work. Once you do that, ladies and gentlemen, then you are bound to be a school social worker. You apply and then you get in there, and then you typically have a leg up. If you do not have those credentials, you can still be a school social work, but then you are on what they call a provisional school social work license or people personnel license. And then you would have generally in Virginia at least 3 years to get those credentials. If you don't, some school divisions may say we'll pay you by the hour, which will undercut you. Or in the case in my division, we'll just cut you overall and say sorry an hour and then find somebody else who has, the credentials. So that's pretty much the scope of school social work practice. And I yield, Brother Cooper.
Thank you for that information. I think it's important that last part you said too about there's still opportunities, even if you didn't take advantage of that while you were in school. Say you didn't know about the two extra classes that you might have to take to get those credentials. It's still an opportunity for you. So we've heard a lot of different tracks again as to what people are currently in, but now I'm really interested why you chose your track. Out of all the tracks that are available, all the employers that you've come in contact with at various resource fairs, people that came to your school, people you interact with in different organizations. Why did you choose to be where you are? So officially, that question is looking at pathway and motivation. What inspired you to choose this specific track of social work over others? Again, what inspired you to choose this specific track over over others in social work? And this time we'll start with Lawanda Jones. You can have first go.
All right. Well, how I chose this track, it actually chose me because I'm going to be transparent with you all. When I finished, I was kind of looking, trying to see what it was that I specifically wanted to do, and I couldn't make my mind up. So I went to an interview at Hampton News Community Services Board. I guess I did well. They gave me three options: child and adolescent, adult, and I think it was jail and diversion. So I just went in order of just taking a stab in the dark. And they called me back. And when I got into it, I actually became good at it, learning the policies and procedures and the waiver, learning all the services, being able to educate the parents. And then I kind of got in a role of not official, but like training a lot of the newer case managers and support coordinators that came in, showing them different protocols, different ways to set up tracking sheets, time management, writing progress notes, and things of that nature. So actually, I always tell people I didn't choose, it actually chose me. Actually, just took a stab in the dark, picked the area and end up becoming very proficient and efficient. And they actually use me in a lot of ways in which they still have the protocols that I've developed to this day while I'm gone. But so yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Great information. Mitzi Glass, what about you? We know you've been in this field for a long time as
A
well.
long time, a long time. I'm like Miss Jones. The medical social work um, I did not choose it. Like I didn't wake up and say, "Oh, I want to be a medical social worker." It chose me. My first job in that medical environment was I was a home health social worker. Oops, sorry. I was a home health social worker. I'll never forget it. I worked for the instructed visiting nurses in Richmond, Virginia. And I got that job because I had done Medicaid and food stamps. And so I think that's why they hired me because I knew those programs. From there, I went to Richmond Memorial Hospital, which does not exist anymore. And I worked on, I think it was the stroke unit, and I did medical social work there. And then I left there and went to Portsmouth General Hospital as a medical social worker on the rehab unit. That hospital doesn't exist anymore either in Portsmouth. And I did medical social work there. And then I interviewed for a job at Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters. So they needed a sickle cell social worker. So I was the first sickle cell social worker at Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters. And I did that for 17 years before transitioning over to behavioral health. So I don't think I chose it. I think it just chose me, and that's where I was supposed to be for those years. And I actually loved it. So.
I would have to agree with you. After 32 years, as you mentioned, you did something right and you enjoyed it quite a few days. So you kept coming back and obviously making a difference in the lives of the families that you serviced. And I always thought medical social work was very interesting because a lot of times somebody might just associate it with discharge resources or working in the emergency room, but even that in itself has so many different outlets. So that leads me to Dr. Baldwin-White as well. Your side of research. Sometimes some may say you don't hear too many people wanting to go into the research side of it. So can you share what was attractive to that area for you?
Well, I actually got my MSW because I wanted to be a diabetes educator. I have type 1 diabetes, and I wanted to be a diabetes educator that could also focus on mental health and the mental health of having chronic illness. But when I started the academic part of getting my MSW, I was just really drawn to research methods and this idea of I didn't like how things were done. If I just went right into the system and got a job, I would have to do it the way that it's been done. I couldn't change that. But in doing research, I can actually change the systems that I work in. I can create new interventions. I can create prevention programs. I can make the systems themselves better. Instead of just using the tools that I have been given, I could actually change those tools. So I decided that I wanted to get my PhD and do more research so that I could affect change on a bigger level.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's an interesting insight because when we talk about the different levels that we've heard so far, the micro, meso, and macro, really they say when you think of social work, organically, it's a macro practice perspective. Because when we look at changing systems and policy, how many more people can you affect change in than one-on-one on the micro level? Again, all levels are needed, but again, policy is also needed. So thank you for what you're doing and ensuring that just systems are in place to be effective. Let's go with Dr. Odera. Why did you choose your track?
Yeah, so I actually like to think of myself as just operating in another iteration of school social work, even though I'm in higher ed and academic administrator. Um, so I would say my own personal journey is what led me to school social work initially. I jokingly just described my time growing up in Portsmouth, Virginia, where I'm from, and was a huge truant. Never went to school. Definitely was the student that many of us work with, even now. And so that kind of led me to social work in general and then school social work because fortunately I had some wonderful people in my life and in my high school that helped push me in the right direction. And then when I was working as a school social worker, one of the best experiences I had was actually having MSW interns as their field instructor. And that kind of sparked my interest in working in higher ed. And it was actually through a relationship that I had with a former professor. I was his research assistant during my MSW program that kind of tapped me on the shoulder and told me about these teaching faculty positions, so non-tenure track at the university, which led me there. And so a lot of what I do now, it really is comparable to what I did as a school social worker, just at a different system level and a different area of practice. But I would say it's still school social work in a lot of ways, and that's my path.
Thank you for sharing. I think you've shed some light about how you had some change agents that worked with you in the school setting. So let's talk to one of our very own currently, Mr. Damien Wilson. What we got?
Oh man, my social work journey was inspired by somebody, not a social work background, but an educator. And I actually saw him. He's almost 90 years old, Mr. Bob Ayers. He was former executive director for what was formerly once called the Office of Human Affairs. It is now called Hampton Roads Community Action Program. So I was in high school when they had some program called Project Discovery. So we all just participated in it, and they would take kids from or low income kids particularly and will expose us to colleges, different programming. And then one of those people happened to be a social worker. And I was just pretty much joking around. They pulled me to the side. And that's kind of what influenced me to go to Norfolk State University. Um, when I first, got into Norfolk State, I thought about school social work, but wasn't really sure. Then came to VCU program and then say, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. Um, Interned at Henrico County Public Schools. I had a wonderful field supervisor, Miss Shanita Williams, like another mother to me in there, kept me humble, kept me on straight, even when I got a little big for my britches. Came out of there, graduated. Didn't start off in school social work directly, you all. I actually did a year and a half in foster care. I worked residential foster care, which was a good experience, but I did not like the bureaucracy. Back when I was coming up, it was also very, I don't know, difficult, but school social work jobs were very much coveted in that time. Maybe not so much now, but at that time, they were very much coveted. And those people who were in those positions would normally die in those positions or retire from those positions. So I was fortunate enough to actually gain a school social work experience. And it just really, changed my perspective. I'm in Virginia Beach Public Schools, so I got Bayside High School, I had College Park, I had Bayside Elementary. So I had two Title I schools and Bayside High School. And with Virginia Beach, if you look at Bayside High School, it is one of probably the more diverse schools, a little bit over 50% Black in a city like Virginia Beach where Blacks only make up 20%. So I am in that type of setting and feel. I'm working amongst my people. I'm doing truancy. I'm doing homelessness. I'm doing special ed. I'm doing all of that. I'm going to end this sort of here. My second part of my journey, as I'm kind of doing those school social work things, I feel like I'm also growing as a leader. I'm serving on boards, in leadership roles. Then, when my supervisor retired, there was an opening. I did apply, and had some administrative classes, Michigan endorsement, but I feel like I had a lot of leadership qualities and a lot of experiences. And what I just pretty much did, you all, I just grabbed the bull by the horn, went for it, went on my interview, knocked it out, and it was a very, very grueling process. But eventually, um, I'm very happy to say that I'm in a position to change. I'm an administrator now. The things I used to complain about as a school social work, I'm now providing oversight for over 40 school social workers. I'm setting the trend, I'm setting the culture, I'm telling them what they can and not do, because some people get complacent in their field, but our field is ever changing. Even as school social work, it's just not about writing social histories and then going home. If you think it's about that, child, you got another thing coming, is what I told one social worker before she retired. So I had no problems doing that because we have to change in our profession. You always have to be upbeat and stay on your code in your profession too. So just always being updated, always being insightful, and always, reading and reviewing and just making sure that you are being part of that change. So that's just pretty much how I grew in the profession. And now I'm in a capacity and space where I can definitely elicit change, provide resources for families, and really just set the trends on how we're going to move and proceed moving forward. So that is part social work story, and that is the trajectory I'm on, brothers and sisters.
Awesome, definitely. Thank you for sharing. And it's important being aware of what's going on, staying current, using those research informed practices and informed research. So that is what it's about. We have to be aware of what's going on. Last but certainly not least, Mario Barnes.
Oh, right. Well, I'm glad to hear that I wasn't the only one that felt chosen for this path, because I will say I definitely felt chosen. Growing up, I never had this thing that I actually wanted to do. So when I go to Christopher Newport University, I'm just trying to kind of figure it out. And I get there and I start off in information science, because I hear that's where the money's at. But when I start doing all that coding and stuff, I realized that this is not for me. I cannot see myself sitting here all day doing this. So I switched to being a math major
Mm.
because I was always good at math. And then once I got to Calc 3 and these problems were taking a whole page to complete, I was like, when am I ever going to use this? And they told me that I could be a math teacher. And I said, absolutely not. You have to give me something else. You know, and at that point in time, they had asked me, well, like, what are you good at? And it was kind of frustrating because I didn't know what I was good at. And so the response that I came back with was, I don't know. I just know I'm good with people. They said, well, why don't you try psychology? Okay. And I started sitting in class and I'm starting to listen. And I said, oh, they're just putting names to things that I see every day. It was intriguing. That's what that is. That's what they've been doing. Okay, I understand it.
Hmm.
And so I get my degree, I graduate, and then I get out into the world and I end up being an in-home counselor. That was my first position. So for the duration of, what was that, 2010 to 2015, when I got my MSW from Norfolk State, I always did in-home counseling, mental health skill building, TDT, those type of things. That enabled me the flexibility I needed to go to grad school and do all those things and intern at Hampton City Schools for 21 hours a week. And so I did those pieces. And actually, during my internship at grad school, I was offered the opportunity to take on the school social work position immediately after, but I declined that offer at that time because I wanted to start working towards my license. And at that time, it wasn't enough hours to really build up fast enough. So I continued working in a different capacity. They created a position, a counselor three position, where now I could supervise other clinicians and continue doing direct work as well. And so I did that for a while before I accrued all my hours in 2018. Then I went to Hampton City Schools to be a school social worker. So when he spoke of that 3-year provisional license, I was that person. I did my 3 years. I got licensed in 2019, and in my brain, I was thinking that once I get licensed, this money gonna shoot up. That did not happen. And so I knew that my time from there was going to be much more short. And so I decided to go see after that tenure from 2018 to 2021. I wanted to see what I could do with my license. And so I decided to go out and explore and do different things. I think the first year I did just completely private practice, nothing else, solely. I enjoy private practice. I just don't enjoy it that much. So I needed some variety in my life where I was doing more. So that's when I started to seek other pieces, and I ended up working with the military, which provides a very diverse range of opportunities, which I think is very great. And of course, even with that, you got to go through that whole process. You have to like I have to have a secret clearance to be able to do that type of work, and even that was like a 9 month process. But I think all in all, that path it was all inspired by opportunity, because realistically, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And every level, somebody directed me and said, "Hey, this is what you could do." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to go find out what I can do over here. And I'm going to go that direction." Then somebody said, "Hey, if you get licensed, you can do this." I said, "Really? Okay, I'm going to go get licensed." And I went that direction. And so now being licensed, the opportunities are really endless and you just get to decide what you want to do.
Great ending point. Again, echoing on what we mentioned earlier, the opportunity is there. If you're putting yourself in the right position, going after things that you want, just being in the right place at the right time, you don't know what opportunity is going to come your way. So always remember that relationships matter, talking and asking questions, being inquisitive matters because you don't know what conversation is going to lead to an open door. So, students, if you have questions, ask. As you heard, you don't have to have a definitive plan or a 100% guaranteed map. It can still happen for you. But he was willing to listen to some of the feedback that he received. So that kind of goes into the next question, looking at daily work and impact. Sometimes I really think this is a loaded question when somebody just says, well, tell me what a typical day looks like, as if it's just the top three bullets and that's it. But really, even describing things, and I know as you all will start to share about your jobs on a daily basis, the words still do it no justice, the impact that you truly have on the lives of others. And I'll just end my part with saying this as social workers, truly, the words that we share and how we direct others can truly sometimes mean life or death. So remember that you are in a powerful position to influence change and the trajectory of someone's life. So with that, starting about what does it look like for a typical day for you, and what do you find most rewarding about your work day? We'll start with Dr. Baldwin-White.
Thank you. So this is probably cliche, but my days don't typically look the same, because I teach, and so when I teach could vary from semester to semester. So right now my days, I only teach on Tuesday and Thursdays. So my Tuesday and Thursdays look different than my Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Also, my work typically kind of bleeds over into the weekends. My days don't stop at 5 o'clock. Um, so typically if I teach, I start my day off with a class. And then I typically have to do all three parts of my job every day. So there's something I have to do with service. So there's some committee work that I have to do, teaching, and then research. Most of my day is spent doing research, working on something that I'm working on, either a prevention program that I'm developing or a training that I'm developing. But most of my days look completely different, just depending on the responsibilities that I have and what my to-do list looks like for that particular day. So it really just depends on those particular responsibilities. But my biggest priority every day is teaching. So that's teaching, responding to students, responding to their emails, their countless hundreds of emails, and preparing for class. So
Okay.
that's my top priorities.
Thank you for sharing. Definitely understand that. Sounds like flexibility might be pretty important in your daily activity.
Yes, one of the things that drew me to this job is the flexibility. I have a W-2, I get paid, but what I do every day is determined by me. And
Very,
so that's one of the things that I really like about this profession.
thank you. Mitzi Glass.
Oh, a typical day. Again, I'm speaking from my medical social work lens, even though everyone who's talking, I'm right there with you, grading those papers. Whoo, preparing for class. Whoo. But anyway, so as a medical social worker, a typical day, I started off as a sickle cell social worker and knowing who the patients were. So I would see patients inpatient. I'd have to make sure that I was doing their assessments, providing resources, being present and walking with people, families and children who have a chronic medical condition, but they're in an acute phase of their disease. And so doing that. Then I also saw patients as outpatients. So I had a clinic. So again, I'm doing a lot of the same thing. As a medical social worker, one of the things we had to do was be on call. So my job might also entail being on call. I might also have to cover for my colleagues, but my top priority, and I had someone who always said, patients first. Patients first. I want to make sure that I am meeting the needs, the biopsychosocial needs of my patients, and making sure that I can document and that I can use all of the skills that we learn as social workers to provide the encouragement, the hope, to my families and to my patients. So that would be a typical day, and then managing any crises that may come up. So sometimes a crisis comes up, and I have to make sure that I'm available and present to manage those crises as a sickle cell social worker. And then it was also nice because we could cover for each other. So I might have a colleague who's in the emergency room, and even though I'm the sickle cell social worker, I might cover for my colleague who's in the emergency room. So, I was one of those persons who, if you need help, I'm your girl, because I always wanted to learn something new. So I've worked in almost every part of the hospital environment as a medical social worker. I've done in our the program, which was a healthy you program, which was a weight management program. I did the NICU, I did the emergency room, I did the pediatric intensive care, and just wherever someone said I need help, I'm going to help, because I always just had this zest and this zeal and this desire to be present with families and to learn So,
Thank you for sharing. Again, I think that was really highlighted by your desire to learn and to seek more, and again, to go after what you wanted. A lot of times, some things come to us, but everything is not going to fall right into your lap. So being accessible to get the information and be in the right place is important. Thank you for sharing that. Lawanda Jones?
Yeah, so I did want to point out, I know Mr. Barnes stated it as well as Dr. Baldwin-White. I think two of the terms that we have to really, really focus on to when you talk about typical days is adaptability and flexibility. I have interns from various universities right now. I started off with Norfolk State because I wanted to give back, but I've dabbled with VCU, University of Phoenix and Region. And when they come in, that's one of the first things we talk about, adaptability and flexibility. And I said, when you come into the office, you will have a whole to-do list. Look all pretty, 10 things to do. I'm coming to hear you on time, got your coffee right, Starbucks, and we sitting at the desk and you get an emergency, somebody getting put out, somebody this, somebody that, somebody has to do that, no Medicaid, lights off. And I told him, I said, so while you all, have your to-do list and time management is very important, just also ensure that you're going to be adaptable and flexible. I said, because when you come in and your day doesn't go the way you are planning it to go, that don't mean like, oh my goodness, oh gosh, you just sit down, kind of refocus, reshift. If it's something that you need to get done that's urgent, maybe take care of that task and then, move forward. So for me, I have to piggyback off of a lot what you all said, which is not a typical day. Mostly on Mondays, we have a lot of meetings. I meet with the interns, the intern supervisor, and my business partner. So we just go over what's going on, any updates, what do we have to talk about? Then I usually go in and check my emails, reply back to families, and prioritize, make sure I'm checking off my to-do list, add any additional new tasks and things like that. And the rest of the week is kind of really just kind of going with the flow unless I have a scheduled meeting. And usually on Fridays, my rule of thumb, and I think all y'all agree with me, Fridays, we really don't like having meetings on Fridays. I tell my team, do not have a meeting on Friday unless you have no choice but to have it, because we do have the flexibility to say simply, I'm not available or that day doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you for sharing great insight. Mario Barnes.
All right. So I do quite a few things. So I was gonna give you the layout structure first. And the layout structure is the typical workday is 8 to 8. That means that I'm working with people between 8 and 8. So typically I go on base at 8 o'clock and I will not see anybody or do anything until 10. At the very least, Now I hear what people are saying because I started this actually back when I was in the Hampton City schools. I used to come in there and I used to say, "What do you want to do today?" Because in spite of all the things that you have to do, you still have enough autonomy to decide what you want to do and what you need to focus on and determining those type of priorities. So between 10 and 3 is when I'll actually do like more hands-on work. I'll leave the back end of the day to do any cleanup and the front end to do any cleanup from yesterday or do some organization and planning type pieces. Typically after that, if I leave at 5, I drive off, I go home, and then by 6, I am back on and I am doing therapy till 8 o'clock. So that is the overall typical structure. Now, doing out the course of the day, I think the back end is the easiest one to discuss because it's just one-on-one sessions. I'm only doing 2 a day at this point. And so once I'm done, you do your note, I can be done with that one. Throughout the day, there's a lot of different things that go on. There's meetings that are plugged in. Of course, you're going to have appointments plugged in. We do on-call work as well there. So any crises or emergencies that come in as far as domestic violence or we have walk-in appointments, we have to respond to those. The thing about working with the military is a lot of things become priority one, while you already have a lot of priority ones on your plate. So I think time management, organization, adaptability, and flexibility is one of those things that you're definitely going to have at all times because things are always changing fairly quickly. Um, I think with that component, we also throw in other pieces like I am the SACMAG mental health rep. So that means at least at one point in time, I'm going to be in there with the sexual assault team where we go over all those cases. And then every week, we do the men's domestic violence group consistently. We got one of our clinical case staffing meetings that we do every single week consistently for all of our cases, anything we have to bring forth there. And so I'm really trying to shorten that piece up because there's so many different parts that often move throughout the day is that you just have to have that overall structure about what you're assigned with because you're still going to have to do your initial intake assessments. You're going to have to do your treatment plans. You're going to have to actually provide the counseling services. But then, like I said, there's a two-part role because we also serve as the case managers for our domestic violence cases. So now we may have to reach out to CHKD. We may have to reach out with CPS. We got to bring in the victims and the alleged offenders and we have to conduct interviews. If there's children involved, we have to conduct interviews with those children as well. And so we have to be in constant contact with the command because we're looking at MPOs and things of that nature that have to be put in place. And so there's constant interface there. Any difficulty that we may run into with a service member, we reach out to their command, and their commands are pretty good at reaching back out and getting us who we need to get when they need to get. But there's a lot of different places with that. And so I would say the rewarding piece of all of it is because we're all change agents. And I think creating change is going to be the reward in any case. The work can be a little difficult, but what I recognize for me is that I am best when I am in front of a person. I got me a new watch for my birthday. If you look at my watch after a session, it says relax. If you look at me at my desk doing paperwork, I'm a little stressed. And it's okay because the reward, like I said, hands-on work. I told you earlier, I was always good with people. That's where I do best. And so if I can do that all day and never touch any paperwork, that would be ideal. But always remember in this field, if you don't have paperwork, it did not happen. And you will do paperwork.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. Great insight. Dr. Odera?
Yeah, so similar to everyone else, there really is no typical day. However, I have learned and experienced that in this administrator role that I am in now, my days tend to have recurring themes, and that theme would be meetings, meetings on meetings on meetings, individual groups, task force, small committee. I spend a lot of my time in meetings. And much like Dr. Baldwin-White, If I am teaching, that will also kind of flavor my week and my days. Right now, I am not currently teaching due to some interim changes in my administrative workload and an increase. So I'm spending even more time in meetings on meetings on meetings. And that could vary from very task specific things to conduct panels, violations of technical standards, grade reviews. I'm involved in a little bit of all of that, both working directly with the students and also with faculty that need support with regards to their work with students. And the most rewarding part, I would say, is any opportunity that I get to spend time directly with students. That is the best part of what I do, and honestly, the part that keeps me coming back when I'm over all these meetings. So, certainly the students make it worth it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Great insight. Just four quick bullets that I really took away from this segment is one, those listening, autonomy versus having not so much autonomy. You know, you want to find something. If you feel that you like to operate on your own, and Damien, I'm coming to you, so I didn't forget, I'm sorry. Um, Autonomy versus no autonomy. When you're looking at, do you want to work after hours or do you want to make sure your job is done within a school day? Or work hours, appropriate work hours. And then not everyone can call themselves a social worker. Remember that. In Virginia here, we have title protection where it's against the law to call yourself a social worker if you don't have a BSW or MSW. So you are powerful. You hold a position that, again, as a change agent is valuable. And then lastly, some people don't lose the job or don't get a job because they can't do the skill, but they often don't get the opportunity or lose the opportunity because of their soft skills. How you treat people, how you talk to people, your attitude, your flexibility, your willingness to adjust and be a team player, all of that speaks volumes. And nobody wants someone in the office that's going to create a horrible climate and culture. So remember how you present. And I think one of the most important places to do that, it could be in a school setting. So Damien, just describe your typical day as we close this segment out. What does that look like for you?
Well, my typical day as administrator was different than being a social worker. As an administrator, I am once again trying to provide mentorship. You can say counseling, Mr. Barnes, the social workers, and then also dealing with budgets. I have a $2.5 to $3 million transportation budget that I have to manage. Have to pay it off monthly through the providers, so a lot of it is administrative, what I have to do, as well as balancing grants that are federal as well, and making sure that is spent appropriately. Then other aspects of that too is ensuring that school social work staff, they're doing assessments correctly, evaluations, obviously advocating in courts for judges and making sure those relationships remain sustained and powerful so then that we can get truancy dockets on truancy packets on the docket, which was how it's been difficult. So, but from a school social worker standpoint, at least an effective school social worker, they have generally 2 to 3 schools. Um, Schools are divided by pretty much caseloads because we try to make sure it is very much equitable across the board. They are expected to provide support with special education, writing social histories, and looking at environmental factors that may impede academic progress for students. They also do truancy, where they do attendance assessments, they do interventions, trying to pretty much curtail school absenteeism. With Dr. Odera speaking, she was one of those kids. We tried to reach those kids and making sure that we get those kids in school so that they can be successful and then become a Dr. Odera later on. And then there's also the homeless piece where they do assessments, they provide resources, engage in that form of service coordination. And then, yes, school social workers, they also do the counseling, which is more the clinical piece. Some of it's IP related, some of it is not. Some of them do groups where they do social emotional group, behavioral groups, and they'll do all of that once again, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, it is a pot of gumbo, a Swiss Army knife of things you can do within school social work. And then that typical day does vary. There are crises. We just have a crisis where we have a kindergarten student who died yesterday, and then we have to do a crisis team on Monday. So you do have those things come up. And, that's a block in my schedule because I have to go provide oversight when I want to do some bid meetings for some of our McKinney-Vento families. So those things do come up. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to adjust, and you got to be able to respond. There's nothing routine about this profession. If you have a one-track line of thinking, you will fall to pieces in this profession. I do think that my ADHD-like behavior probably has kept me afloat in this profession because things can go up and down and seesaw just like that, and you have to be able to adjust. So it is not typical. There is no day that is typical. It does not make sense, and you just have to be prepared, ready, and willing. Pretty much, you have to be raw.
Absolutely. Great, great, great way to close that out. And as we transition now into our last question, I'm going to combine 5 and 6 because I want to be respectful of your time. But I think the two parts of these questions do need to be addressed because it can be helpful to students and those that are just entering the profession. As we've heard, we have diverse backgrounds and tracks in social work. So each of you should kind of have a different response to this to give them insight on what some of these challenges and some of the reflective advice can be. So the two questions combined are, what are some of the biggest challenges or misconceptions about the practice? And this is your field of practice. And then combine that with looking back, what do you wish you had known when you first started? Because we know we're now in a different place than we were when we first started. So, what does that advice look like to give to students and emerging leaders? So, I'll repeat that again. What are some of the biggest challenges or misconceptions about your field of practice? And then looking back, what do you wish you had known now than when you, excuse me, what do you wish you had known when you first started? And give that advice to students and young emerging leaders. This time we'll start with Mr. Mario Barnes.
Okay, perfect. So when it comes to the challenges that we face, I'm going to say that the biggest challenge is always having to do more with less. As social workers, I think that that's something that we're constantly faced with. In general, I know he said that, hey, one social worker per like 3 schools. I had
Yes.
6 schools when I was a school social worker. So you can see that there's often times, and I think we had like 17,000 students at that point in time. So that's always a challenge. And even at this capacity, when I'm working with the military, we are often charged with doing more with less. Sometimes if we're understaffed, we have less people, but we still have the same personnel, we still have the same needs, and we still have to keep people mission ready. And so that becomes a lot to balance. So we also look at like the time management aspect. That can be taxing and challenging as well because a lot of things does become priority one because when we're dealing with like that family advocacy aspect of it, we're dealing with safety and people's safety. So timelines change when a report comes in. And that means that I only have this amount of time and it doesn't matter what I had to do. This is what has to get done now because a person's safety becomes the number one priority in your life in that moment. So those are just some of the typical challenges. The other piece is just kind of like some of the misconceptions that as therapists, as counselors, that all we do is give advice, and things of that nature. Because at the end of the day, we do practice with evidence-based research. We
Yes.
do stay away from just doing things that feel good to us, because at the end of the day, I always kind of tell people I'm not here to make a bunch of mini me's. I'm here to make a bunch of better yous. And so it's not about who I am as an individual, it's about who you are and what you need. So some of the challenge with that is I've always carried the pressure that in my role, I don't get to not know. I will say advice to students, you do get to not know. You just have to be adaptable and flexible, and you need to go back to the drawing board and research and do those things when you don't know. But I also say the advice that I would give you is to be good at what you do. Because when you work your skill set, naturally you get better at your craft. You can navigate situations a lot differently, because a lot of people come in and they get the degrees and things of that nature, but the hands-on work they struggle with. So
Yes.
that hands-on experience is very helpful, and like I said, taking time to do your research to make sure that you're educated and informed on the best practices when working with other individuals and continue sharpening that too. And then I'll just share in closing for me, the last piece of information or advice that was given to me as I was coming up. And they said there's 3 things that you need to know: what you do, what you're good at, and how you can use that to make money. So you have to decide those components for yourself in your own life, and then that's how you start to kind of chart your path and direction.
Phenomenal. Great insight. Thank you, sir. We'll go next to Dr. Baldwin-White.
So I think one of the biggest challenges that I had, when I was getting my PhD in social work, I had a lot of people tell me and teach me how to say no to other people, but nobody taught me how to say no to myself.
Mm.
So I would take on projects and take on things and try to solve different problems and sort of put a lot of pressure on myself to get things done. And so I really wish I had figured out how to be the person who doesn't have to solve this particular problem right now
Yes.
or at all. So that was, I think that was the biggest challenge for me. And I'm still trying to say no to myself. I still have way too many projects that I'm working on. But I feel like that is the biggest challenge for me. Um, and so when I look back, I wish I had been able to tell myself that, like, you'll say no to a lot of people, but your biggest challenge will actually be saying no to yourself
Very
and
powerful.
not feeling that pressure.
Yes. Thank you for that. Good, great information. Those boundaries, setting those boundaries even for yourself. Exactly. Next we'll go to Dr. Odera.
Yeah, so biggest misconception I would say is that administration is where social workers go to die. I heard that repeated and said directly to me that this is like, oh, you're no longer a practitioner, you're on the dark side now. I would say that that is certainly a misconception. There's a lot of impactful work you can do in administrative and leadership roles. And it's very much still social work. I use every drop of my social work skills every day. And there's an opportunity for you to do some great change work in those positions. So I would say that is the greatest misconception. With regards to advice, very similar to Dr. Baldwin-White, I wish I would have known earlier on in my career that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and there are no gold stars or extra cookies you get for exhausting yourself and working your fingers to the bone. That rest is powerful and that you actually allow yourself to be a better practitioner and better social worker when you take moments to pause and actually pour back into yourself. So I wish someone had set me down and said that a little bit more forcefully earlier in my career. I could have saved myself some stress and strife. And then just one piece of practical advice I just like to share, particularly with students, something that I learned very early on, and actually from my field instructor at Henrico County Public Schools, where Damien and I did our field placement together.
Yes.
Um, and that is people can't cuss you out when they're chewing. So to always feed people when you're having meetings, when you're about to have any type of difficult conversation. I still use it to this day, even as an administrator, before we start any meeting. Do you need some water? Do you need a snack? Because people can't cuss you out if they're chewing.
Great, great insight. Thank you. Mr. Damien Wilson.
Wow. I'm just gonna quote my favorite MC, never sleep, because sleep is the cousin of death. When it comes to social work, it's something where you cannot sleep. You have to be up on what you want to do, strive for the best, sky's the limit. I think the realities that face our profession, particularly as school social work, the School Social Work Association says there should be one social worker per every 400 students, but that is just not the case. Sometimes it's one for every 1,600, one for every 2,000, and it can go up and up. So it's not the case. So having more social workers and staffing, and then having these school boards or these administrative bodies realize the value of school social work. We are often in a fight and struggle to get school social workers in those settings to help out. I mean, I would love to have one every social worker for every school, but that is just not the case. And the budget and what is provided often does not afford those opportunities to actually do so. So just fighting for a role and then fighting for just our lives to get more social workers within those educational settings is vital and critical for the mission that we need. I think the realities also, as well as our profession is expanding, we're often in, this internal struggle. It's micro versus macro. It's this and that. And where do we go from here? And I think even trying to find people who are qualified coming out of grad school to do this school social practice has also proven difficult too. Sometimes, they may not have a leg up with somebody who has those credentials as well. So there's many things within the school social profession that we are fighting. There are many things within our professional social work we are fighting too, to often be recognized, to often not have our title. I'd even go back to social services, which was once thought as a breeding ground for social workers in such settings as foster care and child welfare. You may not have people who have those practical social work degrees anymore. And sometimes the work can be reflective in that as well. So it's just not a school social work thing, brothers and sisters. It's a generalist practice, whatever you are talking about, school, medical, or any of these other settings that you want to talk about. I just think my advice is that do not, rest on your laurels. When you're young, get every credential that you can get and out the way, because as you get older like me, things start to slow down. You have other responsibilities, and then just essentially, things will definitely have to pivot. So when you're young, got all that ball of energy, and you can do all those things, then, in the words of Eddie Kendricks, you got to keep on trucking and get whatever you need to get, so then that you can be a better practitioner moving forward. And that is just my advice to you all, brothers and sisters. Ashe, and I yield.
Thank you. Great information, Brother Wilson. Lawanda Jones.
Yes, what I'll say is one of the biggest challenges I'll say is like a work balance, having a balanced life, knowing when to cut it off, prioritizing, and in the time management. So that's one of the things that I would say. And I'm a piggyback off the being adaptable and flexible, just making sure, people think flexibility is, oh, I come into work, I go get my hair done, nails done, and then come back to work. That's not what flexibility is. So just understanding, being flexible means that you have the ability to move things around, but you still get it done. It's still a task. You can put it off sometimes. And then another thing I like to give far as reflection and advice is the to-do list never stops. It never runs out. Whatever task you do, it's not done until the task is actually completed. So what I did want to focus on my reflection piece, because I am a internship supervisor for, like I said, a couple universities, is to let them know to start their internship as soon as possible. We all know with the undergrad is what 450 hours per semester. When you average that out, that's only about 22 and a half weeks. It's 52 weeks in a year. You still have another about approximately 8 months, because most entry level positions require you to have at least 1 year of clinical experience. So I would just challenge them to get any work opportunities, any volunteer community events, or things that go on to continue that internship process. And like you all were saying, like you were saying, Mr. Wilson, just keep on going with the learning and learning knowledge, because again, once you come out, and that's what happened to me. I came out undergrad, I didn't realize, oh, I need at least a year's of experience. So I had to go and do a job that required me to do hands-on along with the clinical piece. So I definitely would say go ahead and get volunteer opportunities, community events, and just stay involved to ensure that consecutive piece of clinical work, at least for 1 year. So when you come out of school, you can kind of hit the ground running and have a fighting chance with getting in entry-level positions.
Great insight. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Mitzi Glass.
Okay, all right, thank you. So the challenges, I've thought about this a lot because I think I'm probably a little more seasoned in terms of age than anyone. And it wasn't patients, it wasn't families, it was the systemic challenges that sometimes I had to figure out how to navigate. Because remember, we're trained, social work is just in my DNA. It's how I think, it's how I see the world. Like I walk in systems ecological theory, like that's who I am. But some of the systems that we work with are not social workers. And so they don't necessarily see the world in the same way. That may be schools, that may be religious organizations, it may be social services. And that's not a bad thing, but sometimes it felt very challenging to try to do what's in the best ethical interests of my patients and families when I'm having to work with systems who may not see it the same way. That's a skill set. That's a skill set to be able to do that. But it definitely was a challenge. Um, if I had to think over my career, the one thing that I would tell students now that I always feel like I did not have enough, that I wish I had known, that I believe in, is mentorship and sponsorship. I believe in that. And I often feel that if I had more mentorship and sponsorship, because they're different, my career path may have been different. So I believe in that. Unashamedly, I want to really advocate for Black and Brown social workers. I think we have to stand in the gap and be able to mentor and shape and sponsor them. So I'm very, very clear about that. I believe in, social justice and the tenets of justice and making sure that everyone gets a shot, our families, our patients, our students, all those that we serve. And I think that can come through mentorship and sponsorship. And if I had to give any advice to students and even to us, dream big, think big, and don't let anything limit you. I tell my students at Norfolk State and at Christopher Newport, you can work all over the world. I was in Germany with my daughter. She was on the call and she dropped off. I went to visit her. They would have hired me in Germany right then on the spot, right? And so you can work all over the world. And so really cultivate those skills. I love what you said, Ms. Jones. Cultivate those skills of relationship building, not just rapport, relationship building, your documentation skills, how you speak, how you show up. Make sure that you have those skills because you can work again all over the world. And that was not, I did not see that when, over 30 years ago. So don't limit. One thing at Children's Hospital, if I could dream it, I could do it.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that. So seek opportunities, not just jobs, but opportunities where you can dream big and people will let you cultivate and develop into the best social worker that you can be. So with that, and keep fighting. I'm always having my fist in the air. Social justice is part of what we do. Social justice, we got to fight for ourselves. We got to fight for our patients and families. And I believe in that. And I'll probably be showing up somewhere trying to do social work with a walker and a cane and a wheelchair, but I don't care. I'm doing it until the day I die. So thank you, Ashe, and it's been a pleasure.
Wonderful way to close out. Thank you for all of that. And one key thing that you said too is mentorship. And that's really what this committee is designed to do, to make that connection and bridge that gap between students and emerging leaders, to give them that opportunity. And hence, within this organization, we have a mentorship program that we've implemented where we are actually connecting those students and emerging leaders with professionals in the field and within other parts of NABSW to give them that guidance and support and really create new pathways to get information and opportunities for employment, et cetera. But again, the mentorship, the connection piece, and the relationship building. That's what it's about. And I definitely want to give Serge an opportunity to say anything before I make my closing remarks and thank everyone. But all the panelists too, if you'd like to drop your email in the chat before he comes back to say something, feel free to do so. It's no pressure. But again, you all have been invaluable and just a wealth of knowledge. So I will extend the opportunity to him and then I'll come back and close us out and we'll finish the call. Thank you.
Great, great, great panelists. Thank you so much for, the opportunity to volunteer tonight, your time. Myself and Calvin truly appreciate all of the work that you put into today's presentation and really being able to provide a wealth of information for students and emerging leaders. And we can't wait to continue the great work with you all. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So one more time, I'd like to give all of you a round of applause for pouring into our students, pouring into our emerging leaders, because we have to remember too, some of them are not necessarily student age, but they, might be older, but just entering to the profession for one reason or another, or just starting off into their career. So it's not just students, but it's those adults that are just entering the field and workforce as well. So I want to remember a few things that we said. Um, how to be the change to foster, excuse me, be the change you want to see in others. And if you can't necessarily make the change yourself, at least foster the conversation. These panelists have done a great job illustrating that time and time again. And I can't say thank you enough for that. Be proactive. Seek out the information that you want. Ask questions. You have a wealth of knowledge here, easily over 100 years of experience and more with the panelists that we have here. Be marketable. What's going to set you apart from those others that are around you? Don't settle for the status quo. Dare to be different. Um, and decide what you want to do. And also, lastly, believe how powerful you are as a social worker and embrace the quote from this career path panel discussion: your path, your purpose, discover many roads to social work. And what does that look like for you? So thank you, panelists, for your time. You have been amazing. I am indebted to all of you. Call me if you need me. I will be there. But I cannot speak to how valuable this was for students and leaders. Thank you for your time, and we respect all of you. And from the NABSW SELC committee, thank you, thank you, thank you. Ashe.